Have you ever sat in your favorite chair with the TV off, phone quiet, and just the silence of your home surrounding you, and thought, is this what getting older is supposed to feel like? Maybe you've looked around and noticed that the circle of people you used to see regularly has shrunk. Some have moved, others drifted away, and a few, well, life simply took them in another direction. That sense of emptiness can creep in slowly. You go from a full dinner table to reheating leftovers for one, or from daily phone calls to wondering why it's been weeks since you last heard from someone. And it's easy, too easy, to start believing that this is loneliness, that maybe something's wrong with you, that your life is missing something essential because you don't have a bunch of friends calling or visiting like they used to. But let me offer you a different perspective, one that might surprise you. What if this quiet, this peace, this time with yourself wasn't a problem? What if it was a gift? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because after 70, something remarkable happens. The rules change. What used to matter so much, being constantly connected, social obligations, small talk, begins to matter less. And something deeper, more honest, starts to rise up inside you. That's where the real joy begins. You see, the world often tells us that we're meant to stay surrounded by people, or else we must be unhappy. But the truth is, not all connections are good for us. Not all friendships are nourishing. And sometimes, the greatest peace we find is when we learn to stand comfortably in our own company. Let's take a moment and talk about that shift. Think about your life. All the relationships you've had, the deep ones, the difficult ones, the ones that ran their course. Over the decades, you've given your time, your heart, your care. You've been the shoulder, the listener, the one who showed up. But after a while, it's natural to ask, do I still need this? Or have I earned the right to choose solitude on my terms? You have. And not only is that okay, it can be one of the healthiest, most empowering choices you make. Because here's something not many people talk about. Friendships in our later years can sometimes become more of a burden than a joy. The emotional upkeep, the energy it takes to stay connected out of obligation rather than genuine connection, it can be draining. And if we're being honest, not all of those relationships were ever truly balanced in the first place. You may have spent years being the one who gave more, who reached out more, who cared more. Now imagine what happens when you finally allow yourself to step back and say, I don't have to do that anymore. It's like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. Solitude lets you hear your own thoughts again. It lets you prioritize what you need, not just what others expect. It gives you space to rediscover passions that may have been put aside, or even pick up new ones you never had time for before. When the noise of everyone else's life quiets down, you get louder, in the best way. And here's something even more powerful. When you begin to enjoy your own company, you stop needing external validation. You no longer rely on others to remind you of your worth. That worth is already there. It's built into every memory, every choice, every experience that's shaped who you are today. This doesn't mean you'll never want companionship, but it does mean you get to be selective. You don't need to chase friendships. You don't need to fear solitude. You don't need to fill your calendar just to avoid sitting with yourself. Because sitting with yourself, at this point in life, is not a weakness. It's a strength. Now, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood truths about aging. People often assume that being alone equals being lonely. But that's not always the case. Loneliness is when your heart aches for connection and finds none. Solitude, on the other hand, is chosen. It's peaceful. It's when you wake up, pour a cup of tea, sit in a patch of sunlight at your kitchen table, and feel content. No pressure, no performance, just presence. And when you begin to trust that solitude can offer more clarity and emotional stability than many social interactions ever did, your whole mindset shifts. You begin to ask better questions. What do I want today? How do I want to feel? What would bring me peace? That's where real connection begins, not with others, but with yourself. So if you've found yourself with fewer friends after 70, don't panic. Don't let guilt or society convince you that you're doing something wrong. You're not. In fact, you may just be entering the most honest and fulfilling chapter of your life. Because when you stop needing others to complete your sense of worth and instead let them complement it, if they come along at all, you finally step into freedom. Now that we've opened the door to this idea that you don't need friends to feel whole, let's go deeper. Because once you give yourself permission to see solitude as strength, not a sign of lacking, something inside you begins to settle. You stop measuring your joy by how full your social calendar is, and start measuring it by how full your heart feels when you wake up. That's the shift we're leaning into right now. Let's talk about peace. The kind that's quiet, deep, and doesn't require anyone else to validate it. You know, after a lifetime of taking care of others, meeting expectations, showing up at work, for family, for friends, you finally get to turn all that energy inward. And that's not selfish. It's essential. Think about how often in your younger years you had to suppress your own needs to keep the peace in a friendship or relationship. Maybe you said yes when you wanted to say no. Maybe you smiled when you were tired. Maybe you gave your time to people who didn't always deserve it, just to avoid feeling rude or guilty. But here you are now. Older, wiser, and perhaps realizing that the only peace that truly lasts is the one you build within yourself. There's a quiet power in no longer needing to explain your choices. Want to stay in and read instead of going out to lunch? That's your choice. Want to take a walk alone in the park and not answer your phone for a few hours? You can, because you're no longer here to please anyone but yourself. And when you stop chasing social interaction just for the sake of not being alone, you start noticing something magical. The moments when you are alone can feel incredibly free. You control the pace of your day. You decide how you spend your energy. And in that space, you find what really matters to you, not what mattered to everyone else. Another beautiful truth is this: solitude gives you space to process. After 70, you carry a lifetime of memories, joys, heartbreaks, accomplishments, and lessons. And it takes time, quiet time, to reflect on all of that. Some of the most meaningful healing doesn't happen in conversation. It happens in silence, when you finally sit still long enough to feel it all. Maybe there are wounds you've carried for decades that finally get a chance to breathe. Maybe there are joyful memories you hadn't thought of in years that now bring a smile in the stillness of a slow morning. Solitude gives those moments room to rise to the surface. And let's not forget how often we rediscover creativity in solitude. How many people have picked up painting, writing, gardening, music, things they hadn't touched in years, simply because they had the time and space to reconnect with their inner voice? There's a kind of joy in that rediscovery that no external friendship can replace. It's deeply personal and incredibly fulfilling. When you're no longer distracted by constant noise, you hear yourself more clearly. You begin to know what soothes you, what inspires you, what excites you. You realize that companionship is lovely when it adds value, but it's not essential to your happiness. And that brings us to something else worth mentioning: the difference between being alone and being lonely. Those are not the same thing. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Solitude feels like everything you need is already here. That's a powerful distinction. You can sit in a quiet home with no one around and still feel full because your mind, your heart, and your soul are active, alive, and connected to something deeper. Whether that's your faith, your creativity, or simply your own thoughts. Now you might be wondering, but what if I do want connection sometimes? That's completely natural. Embracing solitude doesn't mean shutting the world out entirely. It just means being intentional about the connections you do choose. You learn to recognize which people uplift you and which ones drain you, which conversations leave you smiling and which leave you tired. You become a curator of your energy, and there is such beauty in that. You no longer need to hold on to toxic relationships just because they've been around a long time. You don't need to keep in touch with people who make you feel small, criticized, or unseen. Age gives you the clarity to say, I've given enough of myself. Now, I choose peace. And if you do decide to reconnect or meet someone new, you do it from a place of fullness, not from a fear of being alone. That's a huge difference. It means every connection you make going forward can be more authentic, more nourishing, and more respectful of your boundaries. Because you're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone who sees and respects who you already are. So if you're sitting there right now thinking, but I only have one or two people I talk to regularly, let me say this clearly. That's enough. In fact, you are enough. And those quiet mornings, those slow afternoons, those simple pleasures of your own company, they are gifts, not gaps. And when you start seeing your alone time as a gift rather than a sentence, something shifts deep inside. There's no longer this feeling that you're missing out. Instead, it becomes clear that what you've gained, peace, freedom, and clarity, is far more valuable than the noise of constant interaction. Let's talk about clarity for a moment. One of the most surprising and empowering things about solitude is how clearly it allows you to think. When there are fewer voices around telling you what you should be doing, how you should feel, or what your life should look like, you finally hear the quiet truth inside yourself. That little voice that's been whispering all along, this is who I really am. You start realizing what you truly enjoy, not what you used to do because others expected you to. Maybe you love having tea by the window every morning. Maybe you found that gardening clears your mind, or that writing your thoughts in a notebook gives you a sense of peace. These things don't need to be shared to be valuable. They don't need an audience. They just need to matter to you. And the beauty of being over 70 is that you don't need to prove anything anymore. You've lived. You've loved. You've worked hard. You've given. You've shown up. For others. For the world. Now, this chapter's about showing up for yourself. Solitude becomes the space where you reset your priorities. Maybe for decades, you focused on being a parent, a partner, a caregiver, a friend, a colleague. That's admirable, and it shaped who you are. But now, for maybe the first time, you get to ask, what do I want? And you get to answer that freely. Some people discover they don't want to be busy all the time. They don't want to travel endlessly, attend every dinner invitation, or fill up every hour. They want rest. They want space. They want time to reflect on their lives, on everything they've survived and overcome, and feel proud. You don't have to share every thought or feeling with someone to make it real. Your experiences are valid, even if no one else hears them. You matter, even in silence. Now, this doesn't mean you'll never miss the presence of someone close. There might be days where a memory pops up, or a song plays, and you long for a conversation with someone who's no longer around. That's normal. That's being human. But what's different now is that you can feel that moment of sadness without letting it steal your joy. You've learned how to sit with it, honor it, and still move forward. There's a quiet resilience that builds in solitude. You start to trust yourself more. When something goes wrong, you don't panic. You've seen enough, lived enough, to know it will pass. You don't need to call 5 people to talk it through. You sit with it. You handle it. and you come out the other side stronger. That's not loneliness, that's self-reliance. And it's something not everyone finds in their lifetime. Even more, solitude teaches you to appreciate the small things in a way you may not have before. The warmth of your favorite blanket, the sound of birds outside your window, the way the sun hits your favorite chair in the afternoon. These become more than just background noise. They become treasures because you're present. You're no longer distracted by comparing your life to others or trying to keep up with social expectations. You're just here, and that's enough. Now, you might be wondering, but what about when I do want to talk to someone? That's the beauty of solitude. It doesn't shut the door on connection. It just makes sure that when you do open that door, it's on your terms. You can enjoy a weekly call with a grandchild or a monthly lunch with an old friend, but you don't feel dependent on it. You've built a life that's complete even without it. And that sense of independence gives you a kind of joy that doesn't fade when the phone call ends or the visit is over. Because now, your happiness isn't tied to anyone else's availability. It's yours. You own it. You've earned it. So, if someone ever tells you, you should really try to make more friends at your age, smile politely, and remember what they don't see, that the relationship you've built with yourself is the strongest one of all. You are not alone just because you are by yourself. You are not empty just because your home is quiet. You are not missing out because you chose peace over noise. You are present. You are full. You are enough. And the life you are living now, calm, steady, and rooted in your own truth, is something to be celebrated, not fixed. If this message resonated with you, take a moment and share your story in the comments. Someone else out there may need to hear it too. And if you found peace in these words, please like the video and subscribe. We're building a space here where every stage of life is honored, not feared. Here's to you, living boldly, quietly, and beautifully, exactly as you are.